Hello, everybody. How's it going, people? I just realized I forgot to set up a light. Therefore, I'm getting all the sun from this end, so it looks a little bit funny. But we are not here for production standards. Clearly, we are here to discuss about the SQE. So hopefully, everybody is having a good day, and it all started well for you guys. I'm very excited to say that this is live stream number 4. Isn't it shocking? We've been going at this for 4 weeks already, which is amazing. And as you can see, I'm still in my new digs, which are yet to be painted. So you will notice when I've made progress, because the walls in the back are going to begin to change color. But as I said, the setup and the production standards do not matter. What matters is the content of our discussion. By the way, if you guys are interested in production standards, what do you think about the latest videos that I've been putting up? I've been trying my best to do exciting animations with generative AI. So this is an attempt to both test the tools and see what they can achieve, and also to put together some exciting content. Because trust me, I believe you that after a while, as you can see, I've got I do what I can with the props, right? After a while, SQE revision becomes a little bit tiresome, and we are now a month away, actually a little bit less than a month away from the next sitting of SQE1 that is barreling towards us like a train in July. So we've got some people watching us live, so great to see you guys. Do we have anybody in the live audience that is preparing for SQE1 in July? Feel free to use the chat to let us know. If you're watching this on the replay, of course, feel free to put a message down in the comments so you participate in the discussion. Yeah, I make an effort to read and kind of respond to all the comments that we've got in there. So please remember to do that. That's always cool. What I wanted to touch upon today, as we're starting our discussion, before we launch into some MCQs, I wanted to talk about the sort of mind frame in preparing for exams. And we are, in a way, we are surrounded by exam prep. I mean, academics that are working in this environment, clearly we kind of work together with our students going through exams, and there seems to be an exam going on all the time, because people taking different programs, undergraduate and postgraduate, and different types of degrees, they have a distinct exam and assessment periods, so there always seems to be some exam going on. But those of you that are of a certain age, like myself, maybe you've got kids at home that are also sitting exams. Anybody suffering from that at the moment, having kids going through GCSEs or A-levels or other types of kind of end of school project or assignments? So we seem to be kind of inundated by an examination anxiety environment. So I was thinking about this a little bit, and we did talk about this to an extent in previous live streams that we had. I mean, I was talking about this last week as well, if you want to watch the recording of the one from last week. How do we prepare in the best way possible for an upcoming exam? So you've got the clock ticking, you've got the exam date coming towards you. How do you make sure that, first of all, you keep up your motivation, and secondly, that you don't stress out and you don't panic? So if you look at the stream that we had from last week, we were talking about exam stress and kind of techniques to try and deal with this. One of the things that I was thinking about for this week was, what can we do to actually keep us awake while we're struggling with our preparation? And my daughter was currently going through the parts of the sort of final school leaving qualifications. She was listening to ambient music while she was preparing. And I don't know if you guys have tried this and whether it helps you. You can let me know in the chat if you do. Do you find it helpful when you're preparing for an exam, especially like a kind of high stakes, really stressful exam like the SQE? How is your physical environment around you set up? Do you study primarily from a digital device? Are you looking at your laptop or an iPad or something? Do you read from a physical resource? Do you actually have like kind of printed material with text, or do you have a book with you? And beyond this, whether what you're holding and what you're looking at is digital or physical, what is your environment around you? What's that like? Do you prefer to study when it is like super quiet and you're isolated, or do you use noise to sort of distract the part of your mind that wants to run away? Because one of the things that people have been doing, and it's been quite effective, is that there's always a part of your head that is not concentrated and wants to think about something else. So having some music in the background can occupy that part of your brain, and then the rest of you can stay focused on the task. Now, there's literature about this. This is a sort of validated technique. People have been talking about this forever. So if you're getting frustrated with the kids, for instance, having music in the background when they're supposed to be working, think about this for a sec. Maybe it is a study concentration technique to have the music in the background when you're preparing for an exam, or you're preparing for your normal homework or an assignment or anything that you have to do. Some people even have the TV in the background, and they're not watching the TV. They just have the TV playing in the background. And I've come across quite a few people who do this. Now, when I was a kid, if I turned on the TV while I was supposed to be doing homework, my mom would have chased me out of the room, right? And I would have gotten into serious trouble. But maybe because at the time we didn't have like a TV in every room, or we didn't have a device that can actually, play Netflix in every room like we do now. So it is possible that this sort of ambient background noise could be coming through music, could be coming through the TV, could be coming through a mindfulness app or something like this on your phone. And why am I telling you all this? Because in an attempt to sort of contribute to the effort that people are making to utilize these things, I made my own music clip. So I used an AI music generation tool, and I'm not telling you this to think this guy is lazy, he cannot play his own music. It's just I like the outcome. Of course, you do not want me to sing anything to you, and I don't play any instruments. So me actually producing music by myself wouldn't have been an option. So I'm using the AI tools both because I kind of lack the skills to produce the music myself, and also because the outcome is actually really, really good. So I've been producing music with the AI tools for quite a while. Maybe you guys have seen I make various kind of video clips where I explain key legal concepts through rap songs. Yeah, so you see, Dr. Yanis here isn't just for live streams and SQE prep. I also do kind of funky content for my undergraduate students. So if you guys are struggling with certain concepts and you want to hear a sea shanty about frustration, then that's an option as well on the channel. So have a look around and you'll find those. I've got a playlist called Dr. Yanis Records or something. So I thought, I know I have the technology, I know how to do this. Why don't I generate like a good music track that can help in this capacity to work as study concentration music that plays in the background for people who are trying to study? And yeah, I made that yesterday and I packaged it together. So it's not the same song on a loop. It is the same style of music and the same theme, but it keeps changing. So it plays for an hour, but the music actually changes. So you're not listening to the same thing, just repeating every couple of minutes. And I've used it on myself. And I like it. So try it and tell me what you think. I'm going to put it in a link down in the description. So if you're looking for, what am I talking about? If you're looking for concentration music, so you want something as an audio background while you're studying for the SQE, and you want that to occupy the part of your brain that wants to run away so the rest of you can read about conveyancing or whatever horror you're going through in your revision, try that. I'm going to put the link to that video down in the description. If you don't like my style of music, of course, try something else. And then you can come back to this live stream in the comments, and you can let me know whether it works for you, because I'm really interested. And I don't think that we spend enough time talking about the support environment around the study. I think most of us are so fixated on going through the material that we need to go through in order to effectively, work our way through the FLK and all that stuff, that we forget that there's additional skills that one needs in order to prepare effectively. And one of those skills is a sort of quiet, not in that sense, but a sort of focused environment in which you can study. So perhaps the physical aspect of this environment, what do we use to study, physical or digital resource, print or online, and then how our environment is set up, whether it's noisy, whether it's quiet, whether we can have some place by ourselves, or whether we're overtaken by other things that are happening. I think this is all very important. Actually, what I've done in the past as well is that I used to go out to the coffee shop. Yeah. Because I just started going crazy being in the house by myself reading things, and I started to lose concentration. So being in the coffee shop, even though it's just so busy, people are talking, people are moving, people are just kind of scrambling around, that movement around me occupied the part of the brain that wanted to be distracted, and then I could focus on the work that I was doing. Yeah. So there we go. Some ideas for you guys. Let me share my screen and we can get cracking on some questions. Let me see if we manage to do this or not. For some reason, I don't see that screen. Now it's come up. The beauties of screen sharing with YouTube. It's also a teeny bit fiddly. But as we said, we're here for the FLK, and for SQE1, we are not here for elaborate production standards. Okay, this is a real undiluted Dr. Yanis giving you information. Yes. If you want something polished and fake, that's why I've got AI videos. Okay. So let's see. So the first screen is what I was talking about. What I was talking about was here. This is the thumbnail that I made for my music, my 1 hour long study concentration music clip. Yeah. I'm going to put the link down in the description for you guys to try it. And in any event, I would like you to think, how do you organize the space around you in terms of the audio experience, in terms of the physical experience, to allow you to prepare effectively, especially those of you that are preparing for SQE1 in July, and you've got like about less than a month to go now. But let me show you this previous thing. Is my ongoing attempt to save you guys money, because I am very much aware how much money this thing costs. And the SRA keeps kind of informing us about price increases coming up for the next year. And you're thinking, yes, of course, let's jack it up by inflation and add another 2 or 3 or 4% to the cost of the booking for the SQE. Why not? Because everybody else's salary goes up 3, 4, 5% every year, doesn't it? I don't know. Does it? Maybe it does not. So, in my ongoing attempt to save you guys some money, because I know that you're spending a fortune in all of this, I'm negotiating deals with people that are offering SQE support services and packages. So the last one that we have is from Kinu Law. That is a new SQE MCQ generator. So these guys have got like a nice, very slick platform that they generate MCQs, and they're working their way towards producing mock exams and all of that stuff. So it's a nice platform. I would give it a shot. And let me know if you find it helpful. So everybody who signs on gets a 7-day free trial anyway. So if you don't like it, you can come out of it. But if you use this code that you see on your screen right now, Ioannis50, as it's written, right? Because it's case sensitive. So, don't put capitals where you don't have to. Just reproduce it the way you see it on the screen. If you do this, then you're going to get 50% off for the first 3 months of your subscription, in addition to the 7-day free trial. So if you like it and you want to keep it, you benefit from 50% off. I think their product at the moment is something like £55 a month. So, saving 20 something pounds is not bad at all. So if you guys are looking for something like this and you want to give a shot to a new camera in the SQE MCQ area or arena, you can give these guys a shot. It is called Kinu Law. Yeah. Okios dokios. So I've got, let's move the screen. So we have seen this already. So let's get a cracking with our MCQs for this week. We are starting off with Alphatech. Alphatech Limited is a private company with a board of directors that has recently come under criticism from a group of shareholders. They're dissatisfied with the company's performance. The shareholders believe that the directors are not acting in the best interests of the company and should be removed. They decided to call for a general meeting to vote on a resolution to remove 2 of the directors. The company's articles of association do not contain any special provisions regarding the removal of directors, so the shareholders plan to proceed under the standard rules of the Companies Act 2006. What percentage, this is the question, what percentage of the votes cast at the general meeting is required to pass the resolution to remove the directors under the Companies Act of 2006? Nuggets has just come into the room, so maybe you're gonna get. You guys want to see Nuggets? Nuggy, hello Nuggets. Hello. Yes, Nuggets is our cat mascot, but he hasn't made a great deal of appearances lately, so maybe we can have him on. So our question was: what percentage of the votes cast at the general meeting is required to pass the resolution to remove the directors under the Companies Act 2006? Is it 50% of the votes? Is it 75% of the votes? Is it 75% of the total number of shares? Is it 100% of the votes cast? Or is it 50% of the total number of shares? You know what? I used to ask, when I used to teach company law for undergraduate students, because currently I'm teaching company law for postgraduate students. When I was teaching the undergrads, and I used to take them through the entire year of this, so we would do semester 1 up until Christmas and then semester 2 all the way up until Easter. After I taught that bit about that side of corporate decision making and directors' appointments and removals and so on, then I used to start the class every week by asking them this question. Yeah. I would be like, by the way, guys, does anybody remember what is the needed majority to get rid of the directors if the shareholders decide they don't like them? And pretty much every week, the students were like, I don't know what it is. Could it be this? Could it be that? Yeah, every week, man. So I hope the students who couldn't remember this, they upped their prep when they came to the FLK, because if they kept on with that attitude, they would never have passed the SQE. So what is our vote here? What do you think is the right answer? Are you ready for it? I'll give it to you. Under section 168 of the Companies Act 2006, you need 50% of the votes cast. So not 50% of the total number of votes, 50% of the people who are there and voting. So you basically require a simple majority of shareholders to get rid of the directors. What? Only? You know why people get confused by this? Because it seems important. And in company law, everybody knows that important stuff need a special majority. And a special majority is defined in the Companies Act as 3/4. So people are thinking, because people forget about section 168 specifically. So people are thinking, if this looks important, and I know that for important stuff you need an enhanced majority, and the enhanced majority should be 3/4. Therefore, I'm guessing that to get rid of the directors, then you need 75%. No, you don't. Section 168 lands this at the ordinary majority level. So you just need a simple majority of the shareholders, more than half of the people voting, can decide to get rid of the directors. And remember that this is not one of these things you can change. So this is not subject to what it says in the company's articles of association. This is a mandatory provision in the Companies Act. So you cannot actually change it and say, I would like an enhanced majority to get rid of my director. So this is the position for everybody. Now, why have they decided to do this? Because it is important that there are lines of communication and lines of trust and confidence within the company. So the shareholders need to be able to trust in the directors to do the jobs properly. So that's why if the majority of the shareholders are disappointed and they want to try something different, they should be given the capacity to do this without having to jump through hoops. Now, if you're concerned about employment consequences on the directors, then this is not employment law. So, and this is another area where the students used to get confused. Do not confuse somebody's rights as a corporate thing, so somebody's rights and obligations as a director, with their rights and obligations as employees. Remember that being a company director is a function. It is an office. It is not a job. In order for it to be a job, you need additionally a contract of employment. It could be that the contract of employment has got certain processes to get rid of an employee, as the average contract of employment will have, and as is implied by relevant employment legislation. So it's possible that you end up in a situation that the company law right to get rid of the directors on an ordinary majority at general meeting leads to somebody being dismissed from their position as a director. If their dismissal from the position of the director means that they also lose their jobs as employees for that specific role, then the employment law part kicks in. It probably means that they're going to be paid compensation for being laid off their role, and they're going to have to be paid for whatever notice period they had and all of that stuff. So, what do we need to remember from all of this? And the reason I'm telling you this is because it filters into a variety of areas of the FLK, both in areas that have to do with contract and contractual relationships, areas that have to do with sort of employment, workers' rights, and areas that are the more kind of business corporate law domain. The general meeting has the right to get rid of the directors with an ordinary majority. Being a director is an office, it is not a job. If in addition it is a job and one has an employment contract, then the contractual obligations gonna kick in after the dismissal from the general meeting. Now, can the directors actually complain and protest this? Yes, there are provisions within the Companies Act that give the directors the opportunity to make representations to the general meeting when the general meeting is trying to get rid of them, but they cannot resist their dismissal. So if there's a vote at an ordinary majority that lets them out, then they are out of the company, regardless of whether they think the general meeting is right or wrong. We'll drink to that. Which also explains the presence of activist investors. You've come across the concept of an activist investor. There are people who obtain a minority position within a corporate, and then they agitate at the general meeting for a change of direction, change of board, change in personnel, change in corporate strategy, and all the rest of it. And the reason why this can happen and the reason why it works is because the activist convinces the majority of the general meeting to go in a different direction, and then that can spark the change that they want. But okay, probably enough with a company law. Let's move on to our next question. So to summarize, the correct answer here is 50% of the votes cast under Section 168 of the Companies Act of 2006. Next one. And now we are dealing with Mark. Mark is an artist who agrees to sell a unique painting. The painting is called The Blue Horizon. He sells the painting to Laura for £10,000. The contract specifies that the painting must be delivered to Laura within 30 days, upon which Laura will make payment. the contract does not contain any specific terms about the risk or what happens if delivery becomes impossible. Unfortunately, 15 days into the contract period, Mark's studio is destroyed by a fire caused by the neighboring business's negligence. The Blue Horizon, the painting, is irreparably damaged. Mark immediately informs Laura of the distraction, stating that he is unable to fulfill the contract due to the unforeseen event, and argues that the contract is therefore frustrated. You remember, I mentioned frustration earlier with my sea shanty. Yeah? Laura disputes this. She argues that Mark should be liable and compensate her for the loss of profits from a planned resale. Which of the following statements best describes the legal position of Mark and Laura? 1. The contract is frustrated because destruction of the painting, a unique object, makes performance impossible and no payments are due. 2. The contract is not frustrated because Mark assumed the risk of the painting's destruction and is therefore liable for any consequential losses. 3. The contract is frustrated, but Mark must compensate Laura for her loss of future profits. 4. There was no valid contract as Laura had not paid. Therefore, Mark has no obligation to compensate. 5. The contract is not frustrated because Mark can sue the neighboring business for negligence and fulfill his obligation to Laura by providing equivalent compensation. Okay. I see we've got some new friends that have joined us on the live stream. Welcome, guys. Any thoughts on what should be the correct answer? We've got 5 choices. Yeah. Some have to do with frustration, some of them don't. Stick your vote in there and we will see whether you're correct. Now, the doctrine of frustration is like a nice friend of what we've been doing for the last few years in discussing DFLK. We do come across it in reality as well. Do you guys remember the whole hoo-ha about Trump's inauguration in January, where the weather changed and they were meant to have like an outside event, but the weather got really bad and then they moved it. I've got the neighbor trying to give me something. Hang on. I'm in a meeting. I'll come out in a moment. Yes, thank you. So we had Trump's inauguration that was happening, and then they moved it indoors. And of course, a lot of people had bought tickets to do it outside, and they needed to change the event. But that wasn't the only issue. It wasn't simply the people who had booked to see it outside. There was also the fact that a lot of people had other consequential losses and things coming up. So there was this couple, right? And they put their story on Reddit. There was this couple that booked a fancy hotel to stay there while they were going to attend the inauguration. And they had one of the tickets that had them being present outdoors. They had to cancel. They canceled the tickets for the inauguration event because it wasn't happening anymore. And then they tried to cancel the hotel. Guess what happened? The hotel told them, you cannot cancel this because this is a non-refundable booking. Yeah? And they got very upset about this, and they thought, what's the point of booking and staying in a hotel where the event that we came to attend is no longer happening? Nobody would have booked that hotel room for that price for those dates if it was like a normal visit to the town. Which, I thought that this is a great opportunity to remind people about the doctrine of frustration and how it works. So I made a video about how the doctrine of frustration would apply to this situation if this was happening in a sort of English law context. And I imagine American law is not very far from this one. So I'll link the video down in the description. It's got a nice picture of me wearing a MAGA hat. I just thought it was funny, okay? Feel free to disagree with me. The result was that in that case, it could not have been frustration. And the reason is that the terms and conditions of the contract with the hotel already apportion risk. And they do this by saying that you cannot get a refund on this booking, which means that the customer assumes the risk of then not being able to make it or not wanting to make it to the hotel. So the whole debate about the doctrine of frustration rests on this idea that if you choose the apportionment of the risk in the contract, then you cannot do something else. You remember I mentioned nuggets before? The neighbor tried to give me something, and now I've got nuggets trying to get into it to see what it is. Oh man, this is the area where I should have put something that says I'll be back. So hang on. Oh man. Okay, guys, I'll be back. Give me a second. Nuggets is into the food. I'm coming back. Oh. There, I'm back. So what has this taught us, ladies and gentlemen? I need to have a sign that says back later. Man. So you see, the cat doesn't want to join in and participate in the live stream, but he's very happy to kind of run interference in the background. Damn. Okay. So what do we know about frustration? Is that if the event is catered for in the contract and we've got a contractual apportionment of risk, then we cannot go with the traditional rules on frustration. Here, though, Mark and Laura did not have this. Yeah? Or in any event, the question doesn't give us this information. So if the question doesn't give us this information, then we assume they did not have this contractual apportionment of risk. Will this contract be frustrated? Remember, the painting has been destroyed. The correct answer is answer 1. The contract is frustrated because of the destruction of the painting. And the painting is a unique object. Frustration only works when performance of the contract is impossible or commercially sterile, but that means completely pointless. We don't have to worry about commercial sterility here. This is a bit of a more complicated area, and we've got all this case law that I discussed in my kind of MAGA hat video, so that's why you guys need to watch this. Here we're talking about destruction of the subject matter. This is a lot simpler. So we cannot really say to Mark, well, make another painting that looks like the one that you had before, because the contract was not about him making a painting. The contract was buying the object, and the object is no longer there. Why are the other options wrong? And this is a good reminder for you guys. MCQs for the SQE are not going to be, this is the one clean right answer, and the rest of them are a bunch of irrelevant garbage. You're probably going to have like one that's perhaps like a significantly off that you can discard, but the rest of them are going to be plausible. So what your job is in answering MCQs for SQE1 is to work out which ones of the plausible ones are closer to what the question is asking and which ones are further. And if you kind of put them on a graph, if you had the time to do this, you could say these are all potentially correct answers, but if my objective is here, then this one is slightly closer to it than that one that is still looks correct, but is a little bit further off. So if you're trying to kind of create a graph of match, the best possible match, you will have questions that match to a degree or other. Your job is to pick the closest one. And I can understand how this can be really frustrating, because previous encounters that you might have had with multiple choice questions could be the one correct one against a bunch of really wrong ones. If you were doing multiple choice questions in math, this is what would happen, right? You would have like one single correct answer and that's it. So 1 is correct here because the contract is frustrating because the painting has been destroyed and it is a unique object. 2 said that it's not frustrated because Mark assumed the risk of the painting's destruction. This is wrong because there's no indication here that Mark has done this. Yeah. 3, the contract is frustrated, but Mark must compensate. Well, I mean, no, because we need to remember that what happens with the doctrine of frustration is that the loss lies where it falls. So you have limited opportunity, according to the Frustrated Contracts Act of 1943, to compensate people for losses. So if we're looking at option 3 that has compensation, you don't have a recovery for expectation losses. You can only recover some payments that have been made, then nothing has been gained from them, and then that would be wasteful. But here, Laura hasn't paid yet, right? Is that what the question says? Let's see. They agreed to sell. So certainly that is one thing to consider. Has there been any payment that could be returned? But Laura's problem, you see, is about suing for compensation for future losses. She says that Mark should be liable and compensate for the loss of profits from a planned resale. One of the things that frustration is not going to give you is cover for indirect and consequential losses. So that's why option 3 is wrong, because future profits is definitely something that's not covered either by the Frustrated Contracts Act or by what you had in the common law previously. 4 that says there's no valid contract is clearly wrong. Now, good point. That reminds me. You know, this is one of the areas where people get into trouble. Because when we were doing contract law, and we were spending ages talking about the doctrine of consideration, and we were saying that a contract rests on an exchange of value. You guys remember all this stuff? This means that when you're forming a contract, you need to go through certain criteria. You need an offer, you need an acceptance, you need intention to create legal relations, you need consideration, and you need certainty and capacity to make the deal. The consideration part comes in people promising to do something that is valuable for the other party. It does not mean that this exchange of value has to take place. This is fundamental. What you need to tick the boxes for formation of contract is that you need to have, for the consideration part, an exchange of promises to do something valuable for the other. Whether that is actually fulfilled is a matter for the performance of the contract that comes later on. If it doesn't happen, then you can sue the other person for breach of contract. Do not confuse formation issues with performance issues. This is the sort of thing that used to kill my undergraduate students back in the day when we had examinations and we would stick something like this in, and they would get confused as to whether consideration means promise of something valuable or the actual exchange. So option 4 here is totally wrong, because the distraction of the subject matter has got nothing to do with the formation of the contract. This contract was perfectly formed because it ticked all the boxes and had all the elements when the deal was done. Now, number 5, the option 5 that says the contract is not frustrated because Mark can sue the neighbor and then offer compensation, that totally kind of misunderstands the whole structure of the thing, right? Either you have a contract that obligates you to perform or you don't. Or if you had the contract and you breach it, then you deal with the compensation obligations. But the fact that you cannot perform the contract, but you might be able to retrieve the losses through a third-party avenue that has got really nothing to do with your obligation to perform the contract or not. So the doctrine of frustration would release the parties from their obligation to perform. Yeah. What happens with the payment or return of any money made is an issue to deal with later, and option 5 confuses all of this. So to summarize, this question is obviously about frustration. It requires you to understand what happens when performance of the contract is impossible due to this distraction of the subject matter. Yeah. So the correct answer here would be answer 1. Okay. So hopefully we're all happy with frustration and not frustrated that we're talking about frustration. Moving on. So now we are back with our new question. Okay, nobody else at the door. Well, I'm waiting for a postal delivery soon, so who knows? Maybe I'll have to jump out again. So yes, so I need to make a sign that says, let's see, I could say back later, and then I can hang it in a kind of sort of visible way. This is not visible at all, somewhere close to the screen. So when I have to jump out and open the doors or kind of talk to the neighbors or kind of rescue the cats from something, then I can hang that sign on. See, as a low tech, my YouTuber friends have told me to do this, but I didn't. So this is my low tech solution. I could have actually put it in the chat that says I'm jumping out and coming back in a second. It just didn't occur to me. Why didn't you guys say anything? You're just sitting there watching. You're not saying anything in the chat. Go on, say something in the chat. And while you're at it, you can also hit the like button to tell me how much you're enjoying my show here, so then I can come back and do it with more props next week. Yes? Okay. Now, Eco Ventures. Eco Ventures Limited is a medium-sized private company specializing in sustainable energy solutions. The company's board of directors consists of 5 members, including Jane. She serves as the chair of the board, and you've got Alex, who is the CEO. Recently, Jane has been concerned about a lack of transparency and accountability in company decision-making. She notices that Alex has been entering into high-value contracts without consulting the board or providing sufficient documentation. Some of these contracts have not done well and led to losses, and the board was unaware of these transactions until they were already executed. Jane wants to ensure that all significant decisions are made with appropriate oversight and is considering how to strengthen corporate governance within Eco Ventures. Which of the following actions is most likely to improve corporate governance at Eco Ventures and address the issues of transparency and accountability that Jane has identified? Is it 1, require Alex to seek approval from Jane for all contracts over a certain value? Is it 2, appoint a new CEO who is more experienced in corporate governance? Is it 3, change the articles of association to require board approval for all high-value contracts and ensure regular reporting to that board? Is it 4, allow shareholders to directly approve or veto all business transactions over a certain value? Or is it 5, implement a profit-sharing scheme to align the interests of the directors with those of the shareholders? We've got like a bunch of relatively plausible sounding things here. Yeah? So let's see. Should she get approval? Should Alex get approval from Jane? Should they just change the CEO? Should they change the articles? Should shareholders directly approve? Or should there be some profit sharing scheme to kind of align incentives? What's the correct answer? The correct answer, or the least painful way to achieve the outcome that Jane has in mind, which actually sounds good, right? Increasing transparency and accountability in corporate decision-making is a good thing. So the correct answer is 3. Change the articles of association to require the board to require board approval for all high-value contracts and ensure regular reporting to the board. right? Why should they go with this option? Because this is the least painful way to constrain the ability of the CEO to make decisions. Technically, all company directors have the power to represent the company. And remember that any internal constraints on corporate decision making remain with internal consequences. Because of Section 40 of the Companies Act, a third party that deals with the company, if they deal with an authorized representative, such as a company director, they end up with a valid contract with the company, even if the director was acting in violation of company authority, because the third party does not know this, right? So they changed the rule from like 1985 onwards to protect third parties from getting into that situation. So a third party does not need to concern themselves with the restrictions in corporate decision making that might be present in the Articles of Association when they're dealing with a correctly authorized representative. But this still leaves us with a problem. How do we constrain their behavior? The way to do this is to use the constitutional document of the company, which are the Articles of Association, to constrain what people can or cannot do. And requiring board approval, either for all decisions or decisions of a certain nature or above a certain financial level, is the sensible way to do it, because the board is the governing tool of the corporation. And having discussions and decision-making and approvals within the board should be a relatively straightforward thing to do. So it doesn't impose an extraordinary bureaucratic burden on the company when they're trying to make decisions, but still it necessarily involves other people in this decision-making. So if you're concerned about kind of overwhelming kind of CEO that runs off and does things by himself, I'm thinking Elon Musk here, you can constrain their decision making. Now, be mindful that this will have internal consequences, meaning that if the director continues to do whatever he wants, then this will be a breach of director's duties, which can lead to the company asking them to compensate if the company has suffered losses as the result of that breach of duty. It will still not invalidate contracts with third parties, because third parties are protected by Section 40. So correct answer here is number 3. Why are the rest of them wrong? One said require Alex to seek approval from Jane. Why Jane specifically? Yeah, so that's wrong because it doesn't mention the board, it mentions specifically Jane. So there doesn't seem to be any reason to do this. Change the CEO for somebody else. I mean, you could, if you don't like the existing CEO. We saw in the previous question that you just need an ordinary majority at the general meeting to get rid of either individual directors or the board as a whole. But what's that going to achieve? Because the problem here is structural, and the decision-making mechanism is not an individual problem, yes? So even if you change the CEO to somebody who's more collaborative, technically, it would still leave you with the same problem. Now, 3, as we said, is correct. 4, allow shareholders to directly approval, venture, or veto all business transactions. That is not a great idea. You could technically do this by changing the Articles of Association to require shareholder general meeting approval for everything, but this is going to make decision-making almost impossible. Yeah, and it would certainly, even though it's technically possible, it's certainly not a good idea, and it would not be in the interests of the company to impose such strict constraints on decision-making. 5 would be to have a profit-sharing scheme. I don't think that is a great idea, because that seems to be a strange way to align incentives. Plus, there is technical reasons why this wouldn't work, because it bundling in sort of compensation structures of directors with compensation structures for shareholders is hugely problematic, because you cannot kind of preempt the dividend payments or set them at specific levels if it's unrelated to company profitability. So it's a whole bunch of reasons why this is like a terrible, terrible idea, and I don't think it's even technically possible. So we've got certain options here that are technically possible but are not a good idea. One that is technically possible and a good idea, but that appears to be only number 3. Yeah. Okie dokie. So you guys learned a lot of stuff about company law today. So you see, that's another way you can effectively revise, other than kind of listening to ambient music and reading through the book, or you can kind of turn up at these live streams and listen to me narrate the whole thing live with frequent interruptions from cats, neighbors, postmen, and all the rest of it. And if you guys are liking this show and you would like to support my efforts, I would like to remind you that there is a payment option. Look, more props. Look at the coins in real life. This is not even generative AI, my man. This is like real stuff. So you can financially support me by becoming members of the channel. So for $2.99 a month, you can become channel members, which gives you preview. What do we want to call this? First stab at all the videos. So everything that I've got scheduled that goes on for months and months and months, you can watch straight away. And you also get advance notice of certain things that I'm doing. You get special content. You get access to the special members only Facebook group. And you also get forewarning about discount codes and all the rest of it. So yes, if you want to become paid members of this channel, you can do it for what used to be the price of a coffee, but now the coffee has gone up. So now we are cheaper than a coffee per month. Thank you so much. All right. Now let's move on. We dealt with Eco Ventures and Alex and Jane. Let's move on to our next question. No. Okay. If I don't press the button, nothing's going to happen. Okay. Now this one is a constitutional law one. We don't do these very often, but I mean, okay, the fact that we don't do it very often doesn't mean that it isn't there. It is certainly part of the FLK. So we cannot ignore administrative and company law to the extent that we have it. Alrighty. Now, the UK government has introduced a new bill in Parliament that seeks to extend the detention period for suspects held under terrorism charges. This is to go from 14 to 28 days. That's before charging people, yeah? The bill also contains provisions that restrict public access to certain court hearings involving national security matters. Several civil rights organizations argue that the proposed bill violates fundamental rights under the European Convention of Human Rights and seeks judicial review to challenge the bill's compatibility with the Human Rights Act of 1998. Which of the following rights under the ECHR is most directly engaged by the proposed bill? And what is the most appropriate legal principle for the court to apply in reviewing the bill's compatibility with the convention? Is it the right to liberty and security, Article 5 of the ECHR? The court should apply the principle of proportionality to determine whether the extended detention period is necessary and justified. Is it 2, the right to a fair trial? Under Article 6, the court should determine whether the bill adequately provides for legal representation for detained subjects. Is it number 3, the right to respect private and family life, Article 8. The court should assess whether the bill infringes on the privacy rights of suspects and their families. Is it 4, the prohibition of torture, Article 3. The court should determine whether the extended detention period constitutes inhuman or degrading treatment. Or is it 5, the right to freedom of expression, Article 10. The court should assess whether the restrictions on public access to court hearings violate the right to receive and impart information. Aha. Okay. What do we think about this one? I would say that the correct one here is Article 5 of the European Convention of Human Rights, which is in answer 1. The right to liberty and security. The court should apply the principle of proportionality to determine whether the extended detention period is necessary and justified. Okay, why is this? We're talking about detaining people, okay? So obviously the right to liberty and security is relevant. We're talking about deprivation of liberty, and every deprivation of liberty should be lawful, necessary, and proportionate. That's why, judging from the information in Article 5 ECHR, the court would need to apply the principle of proportionality to the government's new legislation that increases detention prior to charge from 14 to 28 days. Why are the other potential answers wrong? Option 2 is incorrect because the right to a fair trial, as required by Article 6, is concerned with the fairness of legal proceedings, not specifically with detention prior to trial. So, seems plausible, but it talks about something else. Option 3 is incorrect because the right to respect private life is not directly linked to extended detention periods, right? Option 4 is incorrect because the prohibition of torture and inhuman and degrading treatment is not about detention by itself, is what happens while you're detained. So that is addressing a different problem. Option 5 is also incorrect because the right of freedom of expression is about the free flow of information. This again is not affected by the detention period, and the right of expression of the accused when it reaches trial is not fundamentally linked to the rights of audience in a court hearing and whether these are open to the public or not. So while the rest of the possible answers all talk about rights under the ECHR that might be relevant in a broad sense, they're not directly relevant to what the question is asking in the scenario that we're provided with. Therefore, by a process of elimination, right, the one that is closest to what is actually going on is option 1. So we should select this one. Now, you guys should have a fundamental level of familiarity with human rights legislation and what are the provisions in the ECHR. And this is not something that gets a great deal of attention unless, of course, you come across all these kind of regular discussions in the press when the government is kind of complaining that the ECHR is constraining their ability to do things. And we get into all these things in the kind of right-wing press about kind of foreign judges telling us what to do and all the rest of it. Yes, the reason why the ECHR is very relevant in the English law context is because it is incorporated into UK law because of the Human Rights Act. Therefore, you got it there and there's not much you can do about it. And whether you wanted to get out, whether the UK wanted to get out of the European Convention wouldn't fundamentally change things because it would remain in the Human Rights Act, and you cannot really mess with this because the Human Rights Act is a fundamental component of the Good Friday Agreement, which ended the conflict in Northern Ireland. So the whole thing is very complicated, but I have the feeling that people don't spend a great deal on administrative and constitutional law when they're going through the FLK. So do be mindful of certain fundamentals of constitutional law and by extension, fundamentals of EU law and of human rights law, so you don't get blindsided if you come across a question in those areas. Yeah. Because, as we said previously, the best way to prepare is to have a sort of fundamental background of knowledge across the totality of the FLK, and then clearly you're going to be better in some areas than others, but at least you don't come across areas that are 100% unknown to you, and then you've got no tool whatsoever to make some selection. Yeah. Right. So we are now moving to our final question, which is the question with Daniel. Let's see what Daniel has been doing. Yeah. Okay. We have changed. So here we are. Daniel owns a small construction company. He agrees to build a greenhouse for Sarah's home for £20,000. And there's a completion deadline of 3 months. The contract specifies that the greenhouse will be constructed using standard materials and time is of the essence due to Sarah's plan to host a significant event in her garden shortly after the project has completed. 2 months into the project, there's suddenly a global shortage of construction materials. This causes prices to skyrocket, and also new environmental regulation prohibits the use of initially agreed upon materials without costly modifications. Facing these challenges, Daniel tells Sarah that he can no longer complete the project on time unless he agrees to pay additionally £10,000. Daniel says he's going to use premium eco-friendly materials that comply with the new regulations and extends a 5-year warranty instead of the standard 1-year warranty. Under significant pressure to have the greenhouse completed before her event and little time to find an alternative builder, Sarah reluctantly agrees to the new terms. After the project is completed, Sarah is dissatisfied with the additional cost and refuses to pay Daniel the extra £10,000. Which of the following is correct? 1. Daniel is prevented from enforcing the additional payment because Sarah has relied on the original agreement. Is it 2? Daniel provided fresh consideration by offering premium materials and an extended warranty, making the modification enforceable. Is it 3? Sarah can void the modification as Daniel applied illegitimate pressure without giving her a reasonable alternative. Is it 4? The contract was frustrated by the new regulations, discharging both parties from their obligations. Or is it 5? Sarah was unduly influenced by Daniel's position of power and her urgent need to complete the project. Aha. Okay, we got like a bunch of different areas of contract law that are coming into this one, interestingly. Let's see. We are talking about contractual modification. What do we need in order to make contractual modifications enforceable? I actually have a new video that I published on contractual modifications using some kind of nice visuals of me dressed up as a reporter, as a fireman. I don't quite remember, but it was something interesting. Now, think about the requirements for the formation of a contract. When it comes to modification, the key requirement for a valid modification is the presence or absence of additional consideration. Because usually it's consideration that is lacking in modification scenarios. Think about all this Victorian era case law that we used to look at, the kind of Williams and Roffey, Stilk and Myrek, all that stuff that talk about modifications. So usually the thing that we focus on for modification is the presence of additional consideration. So one of the parties is asked to pay more money, right? What is the other party doing in return? Think about the contract as a scale. The scale needs to balance for you to have a valid modification. If one person is paying more money, then the other person needs to do something at their end to rebalance the scale. If the scale remains unbalanced, then the contract is not successfully modified, so the original agreement prevails. If both parties are doing something new, then the scale is balanced and we have a new contract. Now, the whole debate in the case law has been, what do you need in order to balance the scale? Do we need both people to be doing things that are materially different? Or is it possible that one person does a thing that is materially different and the other person does something that may not look like materially different, but offers something like practical benefit, which was the whole point about the Williams and Roffey discussion, right? So nobody's doubting that you need additional consideration to balance the scale. The whole debate is what form should this new consideration be in. Here, ladies and gentlemen, we do not have this problem because here both parties are promising to do something materially different. Sarah is promising to pay an additional $10,000. Daniel is promising to use different materials and to extend the warranty. Therefore, the correct answer is number 3. And since both parties are doing something materially different, then the deal has changed, and the deal is now 10 grand for the completion of the project with the new specification. Perhaps one area that you might worry about is whether this is done with consent or not. So let's go through the other possible answers here to kind of rule them out. One said Daniel is prevented from enforcing because Sarah relied on the original agreement. This is not the correct answer, right? This is cleanly wrong, because the whole point was, do we have or do we not have new consideration? A reliance doesn't help it. You might come across discussions on reliance if you're thinking promissory estoppel and all that stuff. This is not a relevant discussion here. This is a clean modification question. In order to have an effective modification, you need to provide new consideration. That's it. So 2. So yes, actually, yes, the correct answer is hang on. Yes, the correct answer is 2. Why did I say 3 earlier? Sorry, guys. So the correct answer is 2. Daniel provided fresh consideration by offering premium materials and an extended warranty. Yeah. Yes. Now, can Sarah void the modification because there was illegitimate pressure? This comes down to the issue of duress. Clearly, in order to have a valid modification, we need to have the consent of the parties. If one of the parties has been forced into it against their will, then this contract will not have been effectively modified. What do we need for duress? Now, Daniel didn't kind of threaten to beat her up or anything, so we're in the domain of economic duress. What do we need for economic duress? We need an illegitimate threat that forces the other party to do something they don't want to do. Yeah. So what counts as an illegitimate threat? Threatening to do something you're not entitled to. It doesn't have to be criminal. Okay. You're just threatening to do something you're not entitled to. Is Daniel entitled to breach the contract? No, he's not. So if he's threatening breach of contract, then that is your illegitimate threat. So this is the illegitimate threat that forces the other party to do something against their will. Is this what's going on here? Sarah is not acting necessarily on the basis of Daniel's threat to breach the contract, assuming that he actually put it in those terms, because he says he informed Sarah he cannot complete the project. Okay, this might be interpreted as a threat to breach or might not. So let's assume that it is interpreted as a threat to breach. Did Sarah make that decision because of the threat? Sarah seems to be pressured more by the timetable she's given herself because of the party that she wants to have, rather than anything else that's going on. So it doesn't seem to me that this is enough to push it over the threshold to claim economic duress. I mean, I've got specific videos on economic duress that you guys can have a look at to get the full picture here. But this is what I was saying earlier, that we could have plausible answers. So the answer that says fresh consideration is plausible and good. The answer that says could there be duress is also plausible, but I don't think it is as close. So I would pick 2 over 3 because I think it matches better the facts that were given. Even though I will admit that economic duress is a live consideration. Would it be 4? Is it frustrated by the new regulations? No, because as we said earlier, frustration is something that makes performance impossible. Here, the performance is not made impossible. It's just been made more expensive. Yeah? So that's wrong. Was Sarah unduly influenced? Undue influence is something that kind of looks like duress but isn't. But for undue influence, you need a close personal relationship where somebody is relying on somebody else in trust and confidence, and the other person takes advantage of that. This isn't what's going on here. Daniel's not her priest or her doctor or her solicitor. Daniel's the construction company, okay? So there's nothing to assume here a close relationship of trust and confidence that Daniel will be taken advantage of. This is purely contractual. So if you want something on the kind of dodgy end of things, then you can look at economic duress, but I don't think undue influence is live here. So we had 2 potentials here. Either 2 or 3 could be correct. My view is that 2 comes closer to the facts of the question. Thank you. So, guys, we have reached the end of the show. So thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you found this useful. If you're watching this on the replay, feel free to put a comment down below in the comments box to let me know what you thought about it all. And I will see you next week. And next week, we're going to be a week closer to SQE1 sitting in July. But, don't panic. Put on my study music that I was talking about earlier and do some revision, and you'll be all fine. Thank you so much, you guys, for showing up, and I'll see you next time.